Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Reyes Reflection Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the pod, share the show with someone you know, and follow me on the socials at I'm Nathanael Reyes. Now, time to talk about the people that keep the lights on per usual. Jocko Fuel, clean fuel without compromise. Mad Rabbit, Tattoo Aftercare, be bold, be you. And use that promo code Reyes Reflection at checkout for a discount at both those sites. And lastly, Arave cards, completing sets one card at a time. Check out their eBay, Facebook, and their streams on Whatnot to get yourself started on your Pokemon card collection today. Now, onto the introduction of my next guest. He quit his job with only 50 cents in his pocket to pursue his music career. He is an avid hiker and, from a semi-reliable source, actually ran out of water while on top of a mountain right before a huge storm, which we will definitely discuss. And he made John Legend cry on national television. So without further ado, Lennon VanderDoes, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Nathaniel. Good to see you.
Of course, my friend. How we feeling today? I know we had some technical issues, but we did it. We managed it, my friend.
Oh, man, I thought we were going to skip that part. No, I'm a pro. I'm a seamless pro. There were no audio issues. I had a little bit of a hard time, but it's all right now. We've got it set up. Dude, to be honest, I'm a little flustered today because right after this, I have a gig that I'm running to, and then I'm actually driving up state to Utah. My sister just graduated. So I'm going to be hanging out with her for a few days. And so I've just got a lot of stuff I have to do. So.
Well, thanks for squeezing me in. And for the people who don't know some context, I know I look like I threw Lennon under the bus. Let me praise him a little bit. I believe that I only asked you for this interview maybe a day or two ago. I think it was Sunday, midday, something like that. And the fact that Lennon was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead, despite the fact that I have a busy week, I'm going to make it work. So for context, Lennon, my friend, I really appreciate you squeezing me in here.
Oh, no problems at all, man. This will be fun.
So, as I mentioned, big nature guy, you love to hike. Can you share the story about you running out of water on top of the mountain? I want to hear about that. I was told to ask you about this.
You were told to ask me about okay. Man, the problem is I don't even know exactly what time that was. I have been, as much as I love the mountains, I have been very irresponsible at times, like being prepared the way that you should be when you're climbing big mountains. The problem is that I grew up on the East Coast, where there really aren't. I mean, where I lived in Delaware, there was nothing. And even if you go down to Virginia, that's great hiking, but like you get to the west and the mountains are actually crazy. And I just thought that I could just walk right up them or whatever. And so many times, especially when I had a car, I would just get myself into tons of problematic situations. The one that you might be thinking of is I got to the top of this one, and it took me all day to get there. Like I started hiking at 9 a.m. And then when I got to the summit, that's when I ran out of my water. And it was like a 5,000 elevation gain hike. And I ran out of water at the top. And I was like, this is going to be a very long journey back down. And it was. I'm just lucky that I got out alive from that. It was quite the adventure.
And there was a storm too?
I don't remember the storm thing. So whatever the source you got from it, I guess they were trying to. But that's the thing, man. Maybe not the time that I'm thinking of, but there are definitely times where I've been at the top of mountains and there were storms that were coming, and I was like, this is the end of me. And dude, I always get in those situations where I'm like, I should never do this again. This isn't even fun. Yeah. I'm not having fun anymore. But then, you get down safe and you're like, well, that was great. You forget about the pain and you're like, let's do the next one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the back burner until then when you're going through the traumatic experience again, you're like, what did I get myself into? What the heck did I do now? Yes.
Yep. You find yourself in it again and again, and you're like, I should talk to somebody about this. Why do I keep doing this? So, yeah.
Self-pain. You talked that you were an East Coast guy, as am I. As you mentioned, there's really not a lot of mountains up here unless you want to do the Appalachian down West Virginia. I guess you could say that that's East Coast. What's the coolest place that you've been?
Of all time, or when we're back in the East Coast?
Let's hear all time. East Coast, we're a little lame over here. No,
well, I love you guys over there, but yeah, there's a reason I left, man. There's something about the West that's so rugged and adventurous.
Yep.
And dude, I just feel so lucky that it's hard for me to even answer that question because every time I have some free time, if I'm not doing music or hanging out with my wife, I'll try and go somewhere beautiful. And like Yellowstone is one of my favorite places ever. It's just unreal because you get the combination of the nature with like the animals and then the geothermal stuff. But then like Zion National Park, like Grand Teton National Park is incredible. I was lucky enough to like I've been to like the Virgin Islands, man. So it's got to be some of those places. But I've been in so many places where it just takes your breath away, and you're like, this is the most beautiful thing ever. But you know, even I live in Phoenix now, and I can drive 5 minutes, and if I time it right, and I'm hiking during the sunset, even like right in my backyard, I have some of those moments. So I think nature is just really beautiful if you're taking the time to see it. But yeah, I feel really lucky I've been able to do all that.
Why the transition from the East Coast to the West Coast?
Yeah, I mean that was really the biggest part of it is I was craving some adventure. And as a kid, my family would fly out to Seattle because we had some family there. And whenever I would do that, it would just amaze me. Like I would look out the window and see Mount Rainier as you're flying over there. And it's just this huge mountain. And from Delaware, we didn't have anything like that. And I was like, man. And so all the time that I would spend outside of the East Coast, and in particular Delaware, I just felt more happy. So I was like, that seems like the formula. And so that's what I did. As soon as I graduated, I just moved out west. And I just have never been back. There's a couple of places in the East Coast that are so beautiful, but I've just never been back to live there. And I don't think I will be doing that.
I've been to Seattle. It is a really nice place over there. I like Seattle a
Yeah.
lot. It's a really pretty place, great scenery, great food. It's the first time ever where it was 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I still saw sunlight. You really do need blackout curtains in
Right.
this area. I've heard about people saying that type of stuff in Seattle and certain parts of Canada and Alaska where the sun doesn't really fully set until maybe 10:30, 11. And being an East Coast guy, I never really thought that that was possible. And it wasn't until I was there
Yeah.
that I was like, wow, I'm supposed to be going to bed, but sun is still out right now. My body's tired, but the sun is out.
Yeah, it's trippy for sure, man. It's just well, growing up in the East, for me, that's just how I viewed the world was because wherever you grow up, that's like your environment. And
Yeah.
so it just so happens that it's pretty normal. Like there's 4 seasons over there and the sun comes up and goes down at a normalish time. And so when you go to these other places where the world really does work a lot differently, not even saying anything about culture, but just like how it looks, it's jarring, man. But for me, it's exciting. So that's why I've been moving.
Yeah, yeah. You quit your job to pursue a music career with 50 cents in your pocket. You shared about that story while you were on The Voice. What were you working before, and what compelled you to take such a serious risk?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of jobs before that. I think the important build up to that story is that I had tried a bunch of different things. I don't have a degree or anything, so I was obviously a little limited in what I could do. But I worked for a company that was like a bigger corporation, like one of the leading, I don't know, businesses in sales. Or they were like a really fast growing company. And I spent a lot of time there and I like moved up the ranks a little bit. I worked in their business development and then I was like a manager for them. And that's like as far as I could go. And then I wanted to change up. So when I moved, I was in Phoenix and I wanted to try something else that would maybe be a bit more fulfilling. I always knew that if I could make music work, then that's what I wanted to do since I was a little kid. But basically, I was like, well, since I can't do that right now, I don't know how to do it. I'll just try and help other people and see what that does for my soul. And so I took a job working at a memory care place where a lot of the patients have Alzheimer's and dementia. And at first, it was really hard, man. Like, I didn't want to keep doing it. And I would leave every day and be depressed as hell, to be honest with you. But eventually, it really grew on me just working with those people. And I realized that I was really good at working with them. And I also realized what they really liked was music. Like, they lost the ability to do a lot of other stuff, but they could still enjoy listening to music. And so I would play music for them. And also, it was part of my job to hire musicians to come in and play for them. And just to be honest, I realized that a lot of the musicians were not good, but they were getting paid more than I was that whole day to come in and play. And so I was like, maybe I should be doing that, or maybe that's like an avenue into like how to play music for a living. And then at that same time in the background, I got more involved in the local Phoenix scene, and I met people who were playing gigs for a living, and I saw that it was possible to do that. And so while that was all happening, the place I worked, those environments, it's so heartbreaking, but they're just not managed well. And the place I was working was not managed well, and I could see it was going downhill fast, and it didn't feel safe for me to even be there anymore. So the time came, I remember they actually like held a meeting, because that's what they do, right? Like when things aren't going well, they look for people to blame, and then they fire that person, and then they keep looking for other people to blame. So they had fired a bunch of people, and they got to me, and they gave me a choice. They were like, look, we need you to either like change and get with this new program we're doing, or like this is the end or whatever. And I just had had enough, and I knew that I had probably the skills at that point to transition and give this thing a go. So I quit at that meeting. I was like, you know, that's the end for me. And right away, I mean, it wasn't like I quit that meeting and then I just had gigs all the time. Like it took a while to build it up. And, right, I think right as soon as I left that meeting, I started driving for DoorDash, because I was like, well, that's a way that I can just make some money, right? But it shifted my schedule from like needing an employer to like where I could just start making money myself. So as I did that, it only took me a few months to really get a network of gigs where I could stop doing these other side jobs and then just play these gigs. And then I made more money than I ever was at any other job I've ever had. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. A lot to unpack there. For starters, that's a really heavy environment to be working in. I want to say I commend you, because that's a really selfless job. It's hard. It's thankless. You have to really, really give yourself. So for starters, that shows the type of person that you are. So kudos to you. It's also kind of funny. You saw the two crossroads and you were like, which way do I want to go? Do I want to stick here, or do I want to take this risk? So in some aspects, you kind of had to take the risk. But I love how it was like, hey, you didn't fire me. I quit. You walked away with your head up high in that regard. But it's now propelled you into this music career of yours, and you really wanted it, of course. So that's why you did the DoorDash and you did these other jobs, so that way you could pursue this. So I think a lot of people are afraid to take that risk. I think more people should inspire to do that. Obviously not in the way that it was done and presented to you, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really lucky that it happened that way. And first of all, I mean, I appreciate that. I think it has been rewarding for me. My grandma, she does have dementia. And so being able to work, if you're not familiar with a person that has that, it's really uncomfortable to be around them because their behavior is strange and it doesn't make sense to you. But if you understand them and just break through that ability and learn to love them, it can be really rewarding just to, I don't know, like it's good for the soul. So I was grateful to have that, like, open up that chapter in my life. But then also I'm really grateful that they did put me in that situation, because just being honest with you, I don't know that I would have had the guts to get there by myself if I wasn't put in that corner. You need to be put in these corners sometimes. And so, yes, if anyone can do it without the corner, then I really commend you. But if anyone finds himself in a corner, that's your chance, man. You gotta take it and run for sure, because it can change your whole life for the better.
And in some cases, right, if you're backed up into a corner, that's kind of your sign, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect. That's just me, or that's how I would respond to the situation. I would respond to the situation that if I was backed up into the corner, this is my sign to maybe try something else or go a different path. But I agree with you. If you can take that risk of your talent without needing to be pushed into a corner, I encourage everyone to do so. And it sounds like you did yourself. It's working great, obviously. As we mentioned, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to make John Legend cry on national television had you not taken that risk. So let's talk about that experience. What was that like for you? What's going on in Lennon's head as you performed and you see John Legend, tears streaming down his face?
Oh, man. It was just unexpected. it was the last thing that I was expecting to happen. And that's where it made everything feel kind of like a simulation. Have you had those moments where you're like, this feels too weird?
Yeah.
Just because, and I still struggle with that. I mean, and my experience on the show before that was more than I felt I ever deserved. Like having the praise that I got from my blind audition, and then me winning the battle against somebody like Tanner, who's just a crazy powerhouse. And like all of that seemed too good to be true. And so there we are. I'm up against one of my best friends, Alexa, who I think you've talked to.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Um, we are besties, man, and we worked really hard together and practiced together. But I also knew that what she had was a once in a lifetime kind of moment as far as like what she did with that song. And I just felt deep down that like what she had was really, really good, and that maybe for me this was where my luck runs out. And I had a talk with the vocal coach, Deborah Bird, who just passed away, unfortunately. She was a legend in the industry, but she had this meeting with me where she really, the other vocal coaches I worked with were so lovely, and they were oftentimes very nice and just made me feel like I was doing everything right. And Deborah more like yelled at me and was like, you need to believe in yourself more, and you're holding yourself back because you don't fully believe in yourself, and I can tell. And it was awkward and uncomfortable, but then it also set me up in this position where it was like, all right, I'll trust you and I'll trust myself. And I think that's what led to that performance. After seeing Alexa knock it out of the park, and then Julia, this prodigy, knock it out of the park, which I've mentioned before, like both Julia and I were working through it still in practice. Alexa was always perfect, but Julia in practice was like still working to get it there. But then she performed it and it was flawless. And so me having to like live up to those performances was really intimidating. And just to be honest, in the back of my head, I was like, well, this is probably the end, and there's not a question. So to see that it emotionally resonated is still something that I have trouble believing. And I'm just so grateful for it, man, because other people have said that they've felt that emotion from it as well. And when you're in that, again, that's the only thing I can say is it didn't feel real. It felt like I was living in a dream situation, and I'm still not really convinced that that isn't the case, to be honest.
It's almost like an outer being experience. It's almost like you feel like you're watching it maybe in third person. Yeah, so I can't imagine that.
It's kind of like, just to build on that, for me, it feels like I'm like outside of the regular world and I have my own world now that's just for me. And that like, but it's just crazy to realize that that's happening in the context of everything else. Just because I know how hard people work to get noticed when it comes to music. And I know how hard it is to have a moment like that on the show. Like there's a lot of people that are so good that do their very best, and then it's just that their moment on that show is just here and gone. And so for me to have that kind of attention and that connection with somebody like John Lennon, who I obviously idolized growing up, man, it's just crazy. I'm so thankful for it.
And I'm glad that you were able to have that for the rest of your life. In some aspects, it's a validation. It's a way that you were like, you know what, maybe I am destined to do this. Maybe I should continue to do this, because if I can be this impactful with my voice, my performances to John Legend, someone who's a titan in the music industry, imagine what I can do for others. And I think music has a good way of that. You had talked about the patients with dementia and Alzheimer's. Music has this way of connecting people. So it's just, music has that way. It has that power over people at times. And so I'm glad that you were able to have that, because, again, that's something that maybe you can always fall back on whenever you have those self-doubt moments, or whenever you have that time of, I need a little bit reassurance right now of who I am as an artist. You can always think back to that performance. So I'm happy for you, my friend, that you were able to experience that.
Thank you, man. Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. Is after having that, it's exactly what you said. The validation is so. That's exactly what I was going for when I did the show. Is that I didn't expect to have like the fan base grow like it did, or all these opportunities open up. It was more just like, if I can have that moment of validation, like from the blind audition, like industry legends turning around and saying, "Oh, you're good," then that's all the like gasoline I'll need to just do this, no matter what it takes as far as sacrifice goes or whatever. Because something that I hear a lot, and this is something how I felt for the other creatives out there, I think they go through a thing where they're wondering if they are actually good at all, or if they're a joke. Like it's like a thing where it's like, is everyone just lying to me, right? Like, are the people around me just being nice and they don't have the heart to tell me? Because it's so hard to initially connect with a real fan base. It's just one of the hardest things in the world. And so getting that kind of validation, and then not only from John Legend, but in an even more real sense, like other people reaching out to me once the episodes aired and saying what the songs meant to them. Then yeah, it's like, how the hell am I supposed to quit this when I am so lucky to have that kind of attention? Like, there's definitely lots of lows in this, and since that experience, there have been a lot of lows, right? But you have to push through them because it's like, I have this opportunity, and I'm not going to be the guy that made like John Legend cry and all these other people emotional, and then quit because it got hard, you know?
I agree. I find that when things are hard, it's building towards something. For example, if you work out, and you're sore the next day, that's because you tore something down to build it up. When you're on the up and up, a lot of times people say you're good, and you're right. It's hard to find that balance of who's saying this because they don't want to hurt my feelings, because I'm putting myself out there, and who's saying this because I'm the real deal. So I think it's good for you that you were able to have that validation moment, because I think a lot of artists seek that. And I think music is one of the most competitive and hardest industries. I give great respect to all of you out there, because to me, I don't think I could ever do that. It's so hard to do, because I was talking to somebody about this. I interviewed somebody a couple weeks ago, and he said, how many times have you heard a song and the person just skips 5-10 seconds into the song? I go, wow, I've done that before. I have. So think of any singer-songwriter, the amount of heart and effort and work that they're putting into a song for sometimes somebody to just kind of pass by it. It's really hard. It's really troublesome. So I give you all so much credit, so much kudos, so much respect for putting your heart and soul in these projects, because it is a struggle.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, we all do that because at the end of the day, that's what makes it special, right? I think songwriters or musicians or anybody that's trying to get others' attention, they sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, make a mistake of like just focusing so much on the promotion, and their whole desire is to just get other people to pay attention.
Yeah.
When it's like the thing that it has to be better than anything else. It can't just be, oh, I want people to like me, so I hope you like me. It has to be like, it has to be good enough at the end of the day. And that's what takes all the work. That's what takes the hard work. And it's hard to get to a place where your music is like that. And I think that's just something that gets skipped, is like really just dialing into, how can I make this as good as possible where I just love it? And then you just focus more on like, I made this thing that I'm proud of and that I love. And if other people like it, that's great. There's just so much more that goes into it. So I think if you're just focusing on the art that you're actually making versus like the promotion side of things, I think that's where the priorities are a little unbalanced. And I have been guilty of that too, but hopefully that makes sense.
It does. The intricacies of the music industry is much more advanced than a 3-4 minute song. You had a really good run on The Voice with a lot of great moments like the ones we just talked about. Aside from what we just talked about, the validation, what are some other takeaways that you are having now as you're on your music journey, on your music career, that you gain from that show, positive or negative? I'm just curious.
Right. Well, the takeaways that you can see is an actual fan base there. So above the validation, it's actually people that go and listen to music when I put it out. So that's amazing. Like, that has been such a great thing that I've gotten to take away from it, is having fans that like what I'm doing. It feels really good to have that. A takeaway for myself has been, as time goes on, it's finding the balance of being able to appreciate where you've been and what you've done, and then realize that just because it's not always like that, that doesn't make the experience less, but that you still have to keep going, right? I mean, I still play a lot of gigs every week, because they pay the bills, and they're not the gigs that I necessarily want to be playing, but that's what I have to do. And I'd rather be playing music and getting paid for that than doing anything else. And so I think what it's done that's been negative for me that I've had to overcome and that I'm working on overcoming is, I used to just be grateful that I was playing anything. and that I'd get paid for it. Like, I was so grateful for that. I could have the worst gigs in the world and just be grateful that I was able to do that. And since being on a normal stage like The Voice and getting that kind of treatment, it's harder to step back to some of those smaller gigs and be okay with it. And and I think that's okay. Like, part of that is all right, but it's definitely just put me in a spot where I have to try harder to be grateful for what I do have going on. So that's just something I'm trying to be more conscious of. That wasn't really a problem before I had this larger than life experience. But again, I think that's okay because I like to believe that at the end of the day, I'll accomplish better things than what I'm doing just right now because I think I'm capable of it. So it's just that balance, man. It's hard.
Oh, for sure. It sounds like that. It sounds like a tough pendulum where you're swinging back and forth of how do I know that I'm appreciative, but how do I know that I could do better? So I can understand that completely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate you opening up. Ready for some burning questions while we wrap up then?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Awesome. What would you say is the biggest compliment and biggest insult?
Okay. Well, one of my favorite compliments. So my favorite songwriter and performer is City and Color. The guy's name is Dallas Green, and he was in like a bunch of bands. Well, he was in Alexis on Fire before that. But anyways, I have been so inspired by him, and so when people say that I sound like Dallas Green or remind them of City and Color, that is like the best thing. And even above that, one time I saw a comment where they said that hearing my voice was like listening to Simon and Garfunkel like singing Bridge Over Troubled Water, which I grew up listening to that, and I had like this whole amazing experience listening to it. And so again, reading that, it was one of those like I didn't believe that I was living in the real world. So that just meant the world to me, and again motivates me to push on even when things are hard. If we're talking about an insult, like what would be the most insulting thing someone could say? Man, I don't know. Because honestly, especially when it comes to music, the feedback has just been overwhelmingly so positive that when people do have negative stuff, I'm so lucky that I can just roll off. I'm like, well, that person thinks that. I can't get everybody, but I just feel overwhelming. I think here's what I could probably say. What annoys me is like the other day, somebody came over and they recognized me from the show and they said, great, well, are you still trying to make it or whatever? That question is annoying to me because it's like, what does that even mean to you? Like, I got to have this crazy experience to do things that so many people dream about doing. What do you want? So I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. That would annoy me. I got a little pissed off hearing that. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I was like, I'd be like that too. I'd be like, what are you talking about, dude? I was on a national TV performing. What do you putting my heart and soul out there? What do you mean? Yeah. I would be,
thank
I'd
you for
be
validating
indignant.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was, it just felt that thing of like, one, it's kind of like, well, obviously what you're doing isn't enough now. And also it's like, did you think that I would have an experience like that and be like, well, I quit? Like, I think that's the thing that's annoying. Is some people think that you being on The Voice was that you actually wanted to like win it or whatever. And I'm being serious. I don't think anyone that did that, at least on my season, actually wanted to win, especially the winner, because I'm great friends with Huntley, and nobody was expecting that. Like, you do it for the exposure and you do it so that you can connect with people and get that validation. And so I do think it's kind of crazy when people see that and they're like, oh, you should have won. I mean, that's nice when they say that. But if they think that that's like you should throw in the towel because you didn't, like, I think people misunderstand what that platform is.
I agree. It's for eyes, exposure, opportunities. I agree.
Yeah.
If you could sing a song and be featured on a song with any other artist, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Good question. I mean, yeah, Dallas Green from City and Color if we did something. But the other thing is our voices are maybe a little similar, so maybe it'd be weird. So I love Gregory Alan Isikoff so much. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a folk artist, and everything he does is so beautiful and like poetic. So I would love that, man. I think that'd be really cool.
Dream venue to perform at?
Red Rocks. Everybody says that. But honestly, man, just all of them. There's so many beautiful theaters. I just want to play all of them. When I'm stepping up on stage and like whatever the layout is, like seeing the monitors, seeing the seats, it gives me such an adrenaline rush. So that's what I'm manifesting for myself moving into these next years is playing a lot of really cool theaters.
All right, I can't wait. All right, here we go. If a dog wore pants, would he wear them like this or like that?
I've thought about this.
Okay.
Um, it's, I mean, for me, it's obviously like the back legs are his actual legs, and then the front legs are his arms. Because in the first example, he has no arms, so that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So it's got to be the first or the second example where it's just on this half, but he would have a shirt on as well.
Yeah, he would have to have a shirt on. Yep. Okay. All right, let me
Yeah,
remove that now. Yeah. Perfect answer. Perfect answer,
good.
Lennon. That was awesome. All right.
Thank you, man.
All right, chat pack time. I'm going to ask a random question here on the chat pack, and then you're going to answer it.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Let's see what this says here. Let's see what the chat pack has. If you were writing an autobiography, what would be the book's title? Your name could not be in it. That is hard.
Oof, yeah. But I already know it would be the man who made John Legend cry once.
I love that. I love that. Plug in your socials. Where can people find you, listen to you, follow you on your journey?
Yeah. So because VanderDoes is hard to spell, I'm just Lennon V Music on Instagram. And if you just type in, honestly, I tell people to type in Lennon from The Voice on Google because that pulls up everything you need to know. So that'll do it as well.
Are you the only Lennon that's ever been on The Voice?
I don't know. I think so. It's becoming a more popular name. So there's a lot more like younger people with that name. But I don't know. Maybe not. There's a lot of people that have been on The Voice. So I don't know. I'm definitely the only Lennon VanderDoes that's been on The Voice because there's only one Lennon VanderDoes in this world that I know of.
And that's you?
That's me. I mean, Lennon's kind of a unique name, and then VanderDoes is kind of a weird name. So I got lucky with that. I feel like that has been helpful for me as well.
You're uniquely you. Well, Lennon, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, joining me on the pod. You are now a friend of the show. I'm sworn you in. There you go. You have been sworn in forever. So thank you so much for doing this again.
Hey, thank you, man. Sorry if it was a little chaotic. Again, a crazy day for me, but thanks for having me. It was really fun to talk with you.
Of course, my friend. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the Reyes Reflection podcast. Follow the show, share the show, follow me on the socials at I'm Nathanael Reyes, and check out our wonderful sponsors, Arave Cards, Jocko Fuel, and Mad Rabbit. And as always, may you live, may you love, and may you thrive. I'm Oprah, and I love you all.